Hi, gang. Welcome to this session. Apparently we can start because it is full. That's exciting, isn't it? Not at all daunting. Hello, everybody. So I'm here to talk about AI and fact-checking. So I'm going to introduce myself, introduce the organization I work for, talk to you a little bit about how we use AI, talk to you a little bit about how other people use AI, and then we can have some questions. Does that all sound okay? Good, good, excellent. So I'm Andy. I'm the head of AI at an organization called Full Fact. We're a fact checker based in the UK. I've been there for about 5 years, and you know what? I'm really tired. Really, really tired. There's been a lot of stuff to fact check in that time, but also I get one of the best jobs in the world. I mean, I'm really, really lucky to be able to do the work that I do, and I want to share some of that with you all today. So Full Fact's a fact-checking organization. We believe that bad information ruins lives, and we're a team of fact-checkers and technologists who are trying to do something about that. Full Fact has been going for about 15 years, which in fact-checking terms means that we've been here for a good while, and we haven't cracked it yet. There is still bad information out there, so we've still got more work to do. And I wanted to start by talking a little bit about fact checks, mainly so I could have this slide behind me, because I think it's really cool, but also because I wanted to try and make the case why I think fact checks are really important. So we're going to go on a little tour of what a fact check is to start with, and then we're going to talk about how they're used by different people. So a fact check. A fact check at the moment is a collection of text on a page. It's written by an independent journalist. Full Fact is an independent organization. We have a board of trustees made up from lots of different political parties in the UK. We declare all of our funding. We show all of our working out. We're a very independent organization. But let's take a look about what a fact check actually is. So it starts with a claim and a conclusion. So we're very specific about what we're doing here. We're trying to look for a particular piece of information in a particular place, and we want to make sure that we're clear about what our conclusion to that is. A lot of the time, they can be quite complicated. Seldom is it yes and no. Normally there's something a bit more nuanced that's happening inside that. But this particular one is a claim that was made by the then Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, who was trying to work out some numbers to do with a difference between some numbers based in Scotland and the wider UK. And we suggested basically that he was incorrect and had misspoken. All of our fact checks have a nut graph. So we have a reason for why we've written this fact check. And this is really important to us because there are so many more things that we can fact check than we have the ability to fact check. So routinely, we're monitoring information in the UK and around the world, and we're detecting maybe 500,000 things that we could fact check each day. Full Fact's a pretty big fact checker, and we have 12 fact checkers. So 500,000 to 12 means we have to be very, very careful about what we're picking to check. And so with this one, this was an example of a prominent politician making a mistake. And we thought that was important because people who are elected officials need to be held to the highest possible standards. And so we said that this is something that needs to change. We also then said there's a follow-up, as in we have written this fact check, but we also want people to correct themselves. And that's a really important part of our process. We want to ensure that we write a fact check, but we always ask people to correct themselves, ideally in the same place where they made the original claim. So if it's on social media, correct yourself on social media, etc. And this particular time, it was made by the Prime Minister in the Houses of Parliament. So this was in the most sort of formal setting that could be made. And so we thought this was a really important thing. And so we contacted the Prime Minister and his team, and he corrected himself. And he corrected himself on the official record. So this screenshot behind me is Hansard, the I don't know how many hundreds of years old official record of politics in the UK. And the Prime Minister has said, I said this thing, and I should have said this thing. This is a good example of people correcting the record. But we're fact checkers, we're tenacious. We spotted a flaw in the plan. We noticed the fact that the Prime Minister could correct himself, but most other elected politicians couldn't. And we thought, okay, we can pull on this thread. There is something that we can do. And so we started a petition. So tens of thousands of people signed it to change the law effectively, the laws of our own parliament, so that all politicians could correct themselves. And it's this kind of systems change that's really important to what we do. We write the fact check and we think about what's the environment that sits around that? What could we improve that would stop this bad information existing in the first place? And we were successful. Here is the Speaker in the House of Commons announcing that effectively the processes of Parliament were going to change, in part because of our work to ensure that all politicians could correct themselves. I think that's just a good example of what fact-checking looks like. It doesn't just have to be a claim and a conclusion. It's a claim, it's a system, it's a narrative. There's always something that sits around a fact-check. But also, thank you very much, it's an important thing. When we write fact-checks, I have this fear. I'm a nerd by profession, you may be able to tell, but I spend a lot of my time thinking about the web and thinking about how do we make sure when we write fact checks that as many people as possible consume them. And so when we write a fact check, my worry is that we've just written another fact check on the internet. And what I want to do is to write a fact check and make sure that everything works a little bit better. And so when we're writing our fact checks, we spend a lot of time thinking about our metadata. So we write the content, but we also think about the metadata that surrounds it. And I'm obsessed with metadata. I kind of see it as like our love letter to the internet. This is us describing our work in the best possible way. But because we can do this, we can integrate our fact checks into other platforms. So Meta's products, at the moment, if you try and share a fact check, you get an interstitial screen appears to say some kind of reason of, are you sure you want to share this? An independent fact checker has taken a look at it. You, of course, are welcome to share the information. You can look at it, you can consume it in the way you want. It's not restricting anything, but it's trying to add an additional piece of context. And we see that across platforms. In the news site on Google, news.google.com, there's a lot of fact checks appear as a specific block. And we also see that where we have bad quality search results, this example behind me is about the potential health benefits of eating glass. AI is great, right? Can be replaced by good content, like a fact check saying, please do not eat glass. And fact checks appear slightly differently in Google search results. You can see them here working in a slightly different way. And you can see that there is a claim, a conclusion, and it was checked by an independent fact checker. And that's really important to us, so that when our content is written, it's not just people who are consuming it on our website, it's people who are consuming it across the web. And so that means when I say that fact checks are some of the most important and best content on the internet, I mean because billions of people see our content and they're capable of changing Parliament. And so that's kind of my receipts to the initial remarks of this is very important. Also, bad information keeps changing, and so this is where we're moving into what the AI world looks like for us. It's not changing radically in terms of the content that we're fact-checking, but we are seeing more AI-generated content coming into our world. It's a pretty low percentage of the amount of content that we're checking, but it is definitely there. Around the elections that were in the UK last summer, this is a screenshot I grabbed of Google search results of Full Fact and Keir Starmer, who is our now Prime Minister and was standing for election. And we can see that most of the fact checks we were writing at the time were around the fact that there was synthetic audio content that was coming from a politician. And so it's an uptick we're seeing, but still less than 10%, probably around 5% of the content we're looking at is AI generated or seems to be AI generated, but it is there. And it's coming through in vectors that I wasn't necessarily expecting. So in this instance, audio content. Some of it's really easy to work out because it's unlikely that our Prime Minister is selling Bitcoins, but in other times it can be a little bit harder to work out. It's kind of contextual stuff. It's low quality, plausible mobile phone recordings and things like that. And certainly the quality of this audio is already at the level where automated detection cannot tell us authoritatively whether it is real or not. And that's quite a scary prospect, I think, when we've got politicians. And content like this is often just made for fun, a parody, but it's still muddying the information environment. And that's something that we see a lot. And in full fact, we use AI a lot to help us with our own workflow. And this is the way that we see that AI can help us. We do not use AI to do fact-checking. Because I do not think that is currently a good idea. AI is developing very, very fast, but right now I do not think that would be a sensible thing for us to do. What we do use AI for is to help us in that process of identifying what we should fact check each day. It's really good at that. We use it to help us find repeats of things we previously fact checked because we want to understand our impact, we want to understand the media information ecosystem, and it helps us understand how we can go faster. We always want to make sure that we can publish more content, and technology is a good way of doing that. Going to take a very quick tour through what some of that looks like. So how do we find things that we want to fact check? machine learning, natural language processing, AI, is really good at finding patterns in data. And so every day in full fact and with lots of organizations around the world, we grab information and we run it through a pipeline to try and identify if someone's making a claim about the world that we might be able to fact check. This is using technology we built in-house, and we found it to be tremendously useful on giving us that kind of context around something. And this is, in the AI world, this is not the most cutting edge stuff that we're talking about here, but this is the sort of the boring magic that makes our lives easier. And this is where we find the most useful use of technology. So we identify things, we enrich sentences, we take a look through who said it, where did they say it, what were they talking about, was there a number involved? And so we can start to break down the content and find patterns that sit within inside it. And this is very, very helpful when we're looking at triage, that checking in process. And it means we can build tools that do things like show us all of the claims from people from a particular political party that have numbers that are related to them that are about smoking. And so we can start to divide hundreds of thousands of things down to just a couple of things. And that narrowing down of focus is just tremendously, tremendously helpful. We can also take it further around particular subject areas. So health is something that we're very, very interested in. Health misinformation is obviously a very prevalent and challenging thing. That could be in a slightly wider wellness context as well, but we know that health is a problematic area. And AI has been really good at making sure that we can fine-train that AI a little bit more about what does bad information look like in a health context. And we've used this to just focus in, and so that when we're talking about what to fact check, we can produce things like the top 10 most harmful looking claims that we can see today. And that process, again, just means that hard-pressed fact checker, and I know there'll be fact checkers in the room, they're very busy people, can spend less time trying to work out what to check. We don't demand that anybody slavishly follows whatever comes out of this system, but it is giving clues. And that is important because that context is really, really useful in making those important decisions. We also use it to find repeats. So we want to understand where people are repeating things we previously fact-checked. And this is not just a search problem, it's not just looking for the same words, it's where people are using very differing words to mean the same thing. I have a handy visual to explain this. Effectively, there's two claims here that mean the same thing but use pretty different words to describe it. So we have an on the left and the right and an either side and those kind of things. And so what we're talking about repeats is to try and work out where are people semantically repeating something that is very similar. And so we have this process that allows our media monitoring to identify in real time basically where people are repeating things we previously checked. So we can do this on podcasts, on radio content, when politicians are speaking, on TV. And so that automatically surfaces up to us where anybody has repeated something that we've checked. That shows us the impact of our work, but it also allows us to ask more people to correct themselves. So a fact checker can come in the morning and just see a page that roughly looks like this. The bold is stuff we previously fact checked. The stuff underneath it is potential repeats. And they can just work their way through and say, okay, on this podcast I didn't have to listen to. I've been alerted by technology that someone has said something that we've already fact checked. And again, that just helps us understand the impact of our work and how far the information is spreading. We also just want to go faster. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but it's the kind of thing that many of us will be doing about how we can have good quality transcriptions, how we can make sure we can work in multiple languages, which I'll come on to in a second, and how we can just do the processing of data to say, this definitely came from this person, or was somebody referring to somebody else who was quoting somebody else. So technology is just really good at sorting out that information and bringing the right structure into what we are doing. And then obviously we're now in the world of generative AI. We're into the world of the huge language models we're working with now. And they're kind of mesmerizing. The mathematics that goes into these things is genuinely awe-inspiring. They're not perfect by any means, but they are changing the ability of what we can do. And these kind of words in here of the generative, it's making new things up, pre-trained based on stuff that is previously seen, and the transformer, that ability to take stuff and work out, okay, what is the most logical next pixel, word? How do we start to construct these things? Trained on billions and billions and billions of pieces of information can do things that become quite mesmerizing. And so we started to look at this in the world of health information as well. And one of the things that we're finding with generative AI is really good at helping us really specifically look at how harmful something might be and start to be able to rank that as well. So we can look at large amounts of information and start to bring some order to that and identify not just kind of linguistically where people are using superlatives or things like that, but more specifically where that content looks like it could cause real world harm. We don't slavishly trust that, but that kind of just process of being able to say, okay, this is what harm looks like, and Gen AI can help guide us towards that, has been really, really interesting to us. We've also started using vision language models to start trying to understand what is going on. So in this rather trite example, we had somebody who has the claim 5 years after taking the COVID vaccine. There's no suggestion, there's no word here that says this would be bad for you. The person simply falls over. But using generative AI, using vision language models, processing that information, we can take short form video and say, okay, what actually is being implied inside this video? And so that means for TikTok, for Instagram, for YouTube Shorts, we're in a position where we can start to understand at scale what is happening inside visual media, where people are implicitly rather than explicitly making claims. And so we can extract things from images and video. And this feels like a really exciting front, slash bad, because we're going to see an awful lot more bad information. But it helps us understand more platform services, more ability to just make sure we always know what is going on, and we can point our fact checkers at the most important stuff. And I think the thing that I'm perhaps most proud of in the work that we've done is we've built this from the point of view that we are fact checkers trying to solve the problems that we have in front of us. We haven't just approached this from, wouldn't it be cool if we made something with AI? We've approached it from the point of view of, we have challenges in our work and can technology help us? And one of the interesting things is that also means that other organizations who are working in fact checking are facing similar kind of problems as well. And so the work that we produced in Full Fact is being used by about 40 other fact-checking organizations. I can see some of them in the room today. Thank you very much for being here. If people want to go and chat to real users, we've got them dotted around the room. And over the last year, we've been involved in fact-checking around 12 different elections. And we've been working in 3 different languages as well. So we've been working in French, English, and the Arabic language, which presented a significant set of technical challenges in the translation and the work, but I think it does show the kind of the power of the collaboration of fact checkers. I think we are great when we work together, and that's a very exciting thing. And it means that the work we've done has scaled. We're monitoring hundreds of thousands of things, and so the fact checkers are defining it themselves. They log in and they say, I'm interested in this podcast, this YouTube channel, this Telegram open chat, whatever it may be that they're interested in. We can start to run these algorithms through that and identify what these things look like. And it means that we get to the exciting position where we're working in quite a lot of different countries, which is good. And we have really exciting groups of users. This is the amazing gang from the Arabic Fact-Checking Network, who we've been partnering with for the last year, who do extraordinary things, working often very challenging environments. And I'm really proud that we get to partner with them and thinking about how our technology can help often very small fact-checking organizations identify important things to check and scale their work. And I think the fact that people like this are able to use AI and collaborating with us to make sure it's the best it can be is just a fine example of the way that a community in fact-checking, which is not that big, and let's face it, has some big funding challenges right now, working together is just an incredibly powerful way of us making sure we're having the biggest possible impact that we can. I wanted to finish up by just talking a little bit through about what I think are some of the next things that we're interested in. So that kind of vision language model stuff I was talking about, I think is going to be really prevalent in our work. So thinking about how we can get inside visual content, maybe automatically extract claims from images and bring those into our fact-checking world will be important, and particularly what we can do with short-form video. We're going to be working with other fact-checkers in Europe on projects in this area in the near future, and I think that's been a blind spot for too long, and that will just really help us have a better scale and understanding of what we're trying to monitor. I think we're also thinking about how we can improve our workflows. We're very lucky to have been awarded a grant from Journalism AI recently. I'm working with Cambridge University in the UK to think about how we can automate some kind of behind-the-scenes parts of how we understand the progress of our current government against the things that they said they would do in their manifesto. That's a very, very exciting project for us, and it means that we can just work at a bigger scale than we have been able to previously. And the final thing that I think is super interesting in what we're doing is to think about data. The way that people are consuming content is changing radically. So fact-checking started at the point where there was, you Google searched something, and in a very, what seems now quaint way, Google tried to show the most important thing at the top of the search rankings. That is changing radically at the moment. We have a lot of AI content that's appearing at a lot of the search rankings. We have people who are using chat-based assistants. They're interacting with content in different ways. And so I'm interested in the data that is produced around fact-checking, because I'm interested in about how do we evolve what fact-checking looks like to make sure that our content appears where people most need it. And that's going to be maybe an increasingly personalized experiences. Your chat history of ChatGPT is going to be different to mine. You'll see different information, but we want to ensure that good quality content is in there, because we know that fact checks are good quality. We know that they're being seen by a lot of people, and as the internet changes, we have to change what our content looks like as well. And so the data stuff, just in high-level summary, when we're writing fact checks, we know that there are differences in what sits inside them. Some of them are more important than others. Some of them are covering more important topics than others. Some of them can be about damage to people's health. Sometimes it can be damage to people's wealth. Sometimes it's a media literacy thing. There's a lot of stuff that sits inside a fact check that we know, because when we're writing them, we know what's going on, but we don't necessarily tell people. And so we're thinking about how do we capture some of that additional information? How do we start to explain what some of that looks like so that can then be transported with the fact check to say, this seems relevant for this period of time. This seems to be motivated by this particular reason for spreading the information. And also, here's the working out that went into it. When we're writing a fact check, there's probably going to be, 4, 5, 6 questions we asked ourselves when we were working it out. We go to this place and check to this thing, and we use this authoritative source. None of that gets exposed, and I think that potentially it could. And so we've been working on some projects to take a look at what this could look like, to just try and produce more data, so that we can understand when we're dealing with platforms that it's not just the fact check, there are differing ways being able to engage with it. And so we've taken a very quick canter through what that looks like. Basically, it looks like a boring slide full of text, but let me just try and contextualize that slightly. There is information in the sort of tealy blue box that is fairly obvious. It's things about when something was created, information about where it was, what format it was in, that kind of thing. And then there's also information in the pink outline, which is potentially interesting for us in terms of this is what might seem more subjective, but we believe, and working with some excellent academic partners, one of which Peter Cunliffe-Jones is in the room as well, I think, thinking about how can we codify this? How can we provide the right training? How can we support people to be able to add this content to fact checks so that we can record more? So we can make sure we've got the best information available that goes alongside it so that people know more about how to use these fact checks. What context is it most applicable for them to be used in? Because we want our content to be used in the best possible ways. And then that black box at the bottom is a little bit about the working out. What was the questions and answers we asked ourselves when we were writing that fact check? What sources did we pick as seemingly the most salient ones when we were working through? If we show that information as well, will that help in the way that this stuff gets integrated into other platforms? Very early stages, but I do think, I just wanted to highlight the idea that as a community, we are engaging and will continue to engage with the idea that what we are doing is evolving as the way that people are consuming information is evolving, and AI is clearly increasingly going to be a very important part of that process. So the team, I'm very proud. So this work we're doing, there's all 8 of us there on the screen who have built this software, and we're keeping on going. We have plans in place to work in a lot more languages. We're going to be working with a lot more partners, and I think, I'm incredibly delighted that I get to share this kind of work with you, but just talk about the way that sensible use of technology by fact-checking has allowed us to scale our work. It's allowed us to make sure that we're making smarter decisions, and it's allowed us to work with more organizations around the world to try and ensure that everybody has access to the best technology, because I really, really believe that fact-checkers deserve the best of absolutely everything. The work they're doing is completely essential, and our work has never been more important. So that's me. We're a charity. That's our donate link, and I'd love to take any questions. Thank you very much. If there are no questions, I'm going to tell you an anecdote about the jazz-themed hotel I'm staying in, so please have questions.
Hiya. Thank you for that. That was really helpful. I had a question for you on the metadata that you use to verify images or document content. in a world where metadata can be scraped, it can be edited, even if you're a good actor, just uploading a photo, sharing it via WhatsApp, you lose that data, and it can be augmented by bad actors. What's your mechanism for either authenticating kind of at source or fact-checking the metadata itself?
So it's a very tricky space at the moment, so there's no kind of perfect answer for it. So, I mean, we don't rely on any automation in that space, so we don't use any tools to definitively say one way or another. Everything will be cross-referenced a couple of times. We try and use the standards that exist, so where there's things like the CTPA standard or where there's particularly things like SynthID from Google, we're really interested in being able to have those as this was definitely created by AI or was this definitely created by, came from a camera from a reputable broadcaster. So we have those kind of processes in place. But the bad actors can do bad things, and so also we're making sure that we're understanding the context something sits in, the tool, what fits around it, and the technology will be augmented by what is close to OSINT sort of tools as well about understanding the context on things. Thank you. The person who's giving me time checks at the back is so expressive. I cannot miss 5 minutes to go. Thank you. There was another question just back here.
Where can you get training on fact-checking?
Where can you get training on fact-checking? I don't want to be too much of a hype person, but we have a wonderful training business inside Full Fact, and my email is on the screen. But I think that, fact-checking is journalism, right? So it's about making sure that you're following the good processes of journalism, but also fact-checking is about showing you're working out. So every fact-check, we think we're doing the best possible work that we can, but also it's there for everybody else to follow along and decide whether they've agreed with our conclusions. And so I always think that people will ask a question along some lines of who fact checks the fact checkers, and the answer is always, it's everybody, it's up to you. We're doing the best work that we can, and you should be able to see everything we've done. All of our working out is there and transparent, and they're adding context, and it's up to you about how you want to join in with that. And as a community, we need more fact checkers at all times. The number of fact checkers around the world is at risk at the moment as we see platforms pulling away from funding or potentially pulling away from funding of fact checkers. And so, this is a point where we want people to come together, definitely.
Thank you. How are the bad actors using AI? What are your observations of that?
Many and various, I think, is the thing at the moment. So we're seeing, I suppose, the democratization of tools. And so what maybe only a couple of years ago would have required huge amounts of data centers and capacity to be able to do things can now be done by a bored teenager on their mobile phone. And so it's quite difficult to, at times, understand who is producing the very worst of the information. But the idea of being able to create increasingly credible images is definitely part of this. And it's also because one of the things that we talk about in our media literacy is how does something make you feel? And that's a really good indication of whether you might want to automatically share something, because if it's sort of too good to be true and you're so excited you can't wait to share it, that's that kind of moment to check yourself. I had this myself with the Pope in a puffer jacket. Could not wait to share that. My word, what a delightful image. Turned out to be AI generated. And so what we see with the bad actors sometimes is just that hooking onto the emotion of what can I create that's an arresting image that's just going to grab attention. And that can be bad actors in terms of scams. You know, we see a lot of kind of AI slop that just gets people to go to websites that are crammed with adverts, or that could be about actual kind of state level propaganda. And the fact that that is something that can be used by so many people and so effectively is definitely part of the challenge at the moment, and it's evolving fast. I did not expect to see audio being a big factor for this, but it was, and I'm absolutely assuming that synthetic video is going to be a real problem, and in the very near future. Okay. One last question, and we've got it just here.
Hi, Andy. Thanks. Great work you're doing. Last year, 2024 elections, the Ghana Fact-Checking Coalition, I'm a fact-checker in Ghana. Full Fact, the AI platform was really useful for the work we did. We did a media situation room, monitored the elections, was really great. A quick challenge that we had that I want to bring to your attention. you did talk about helping the Arabic fact checkers. What are your projections going into other local languages? In Africa, Swahili, Hausa, a lot of misinformation is spread on the local media platforms in local language. How are you going to deal with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So more languages is just vital in everything we're doing. And I would love to be able to say that we're going to support every single language. It's always work to do so. And we're also, unfortunately, in a world where some languages are better supported by some of the technology we rely on. But I think one of the things that we have discovered in our work and we continue to get better at is even heavily accented English was a challenge in some parts of what we've been doing with some work in Nigeria. And so we want to ensure that we add languages and support that are going to help users like yourself have the best experience. And one of the things that I'm very pleased about with Full Fact is this is not a project with fixed funding. This is a service that we are offering, and we tend to do it for the long term. And so it means that we can invest in these things and ensure that we keep on adding those languages and those services as information changes and as we get more users. So watch this space, and thanks for being a great user. I've been very clearly told that was the last question. Thanks, everybody. Great to chat.